Superhero content continues with Amazon's brand new show, The Boys. Though this dark comedy is a bit of a different spin on the superhero genre, we'll be talking all about that today here on TV Pilot Reviews, so stay tuned.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to TV Pilot Reviews here on AfterBuzz TV. As I just mentioned, we are today reviewing Amazon's brand new pilot, The Boys. It aired on Friday. It's once again another superhero property, though I think this is doing something kind of different than what we're used to, so I'm excited to get into it. Before we jump into the show, I want you guys to know we are specifically a pilot review show. On this show, we talk about the art of crafting a good pilot, and we only cover episodes 1 of television shows. We do have an after show for The Boys, though, so if you're interested in hearing more about the show, we highly recommend you check that out. This is a different take, and this take is only discussing the pilot. So we thank you for tuning in, and we are excited to get into the show. Before we do, let me introduce myself, guys. My name is Jeff Graham. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm joined by a pair of brilliant, analytical, thoughtful, and opinionated co-hosts. Linda, say hello to the fans.
Hi, guys.
And Mina Wahab, say hello as well.
Hey, everyone.
Okay. Real quick, I mentioned that we're going to be covering the show, guys, but we also have some other segments. We will be rating the pilot later in the show. We're going to let you know whether or not we were going to pass or play on the pilot. We have some info about the cast and some development info as well. So tons and tons of great stuff in the show. Before we dive in quickly, the premise of this show, if you know nothing about it, is that it is a superhero show kind of set in a seemingly contemporary society, sort of that looks like our own, except for a number of people have superpowers. The society calls them supes, and it's more commonplace than it would be in other societies. And we're specifically following kind of a corporatized and commercialized group of 7 superheroes that are publicly admirable, but privately pretty detestable. And that's all I'm going to say for the pre-spoiler part of the show, because this first maybe 15 minutes is spoiler-free, last 10 minutes is spoiler-filled, but we will warn you when that moment comes. With all that housekeeping out of the way, Mina, let's start with you because you just got off the pilot. She just finished it. What did you think?
You know, I wasn't sure what to expect. I never know what way the superhero genre is going to go. Like, sometimes I love the superhero genre. Other times I'm like, it tries to be funny, and it's not. With this one, I liked it. There was something about it that just felt like more real. It took me back to, for some reason, like the Spider-Man days when Tobey Maguire played Spider-Man. Like, there was something about it that felt old and new at the same time, and I don't know how to pinpoint that feeling, but I thought the writing was pretty good. I liked the acting. Everything felt like really fresh, and it didn't feel like it was trying too hard to be funny.
I think with the Spider-Man comparison, specifically the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire ones, I agree that it feels sort of like a more grounded world than the Marvel. You know, with Marvel, the way it's gone recently is there's so much sci-fi elements and universes and planets, whereas Spider-Man was just a kid in New York trying to fight crime. Exactly. This had some same grounded elements, I think. So I hear you on that.
Yeah, it feels like it's more about the story and less about the explosions. And I mean, there obviously was a lot of that too, but it wasn't so in your face where I was like, oh my God, every 2 seconds it's a fight scene. I like that it felt like it took time for the story to develop, and it was laid out so, you know, everything was like so clear and to the point where it's like, okay, there's a boy wants revenge or justice because this happened to him. He experiences a loss, and the loss was it was like sad and comical at the same time, which is hard to do. And you're like, okay, you're following this protagonist that seems like, at first you're like, oh, okay, basic boy next door, kind of like Peter Parker, but then you realize, okay, he's kind of the nerd, he's very smart, has some insecurities here and there, not super confident, but I feel like his arc is going to be really good. I like already sense it coming. Cool. And he wants to be like the fun sidekick. So I like where the story is headed so far.
What did you think, Linda?
I liked it. I was surprised that I liked it because I'm not a superhero person at all. But I agree with Mina. I think that the story, I always say in a pilot, well, why am I going to care? Like, why do I care about these characters? And I think in this story, they really laid it out very clearly. I thought it was written well, and I started to care about the characters. Like, oh, I see what's happening here. So I liked it.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's nice is I'm not necessarily a superhero person either. I'm feeling a little bit over the Marvel franchises, and I know they're widely popular, but it's just a little exhausting when you have so much superhero content. But what this show is doing is sort of deliberately pushing back against the crazy amount of superhero content we have. I will say, I think the idea of like superheroes who aren't as heroic as you think is a little less fresh than this show thinks that it is. You know, we had Watchmen already. The Incredibles is sort of doing the same things thematically. So we've seen these types of themes explored, but at the same time, I think the show does work on its own merits. It is well written. It's really, really well shot and directed. I mean, Amazon shows pull out all the stops in terms of cinematography. So I think for the most part, it's solid. I think if you want a show that at least is trying to be thoughtful about the themes of what it means for superheroes to exist in contemporary society, this could be the show for you. That being said, I am going to play on the pilot, so I plan on at least watching one more and seeing where it takes me. And for audiences who like sort of subversive superhero content, I would recommend this pilot as well. What do you think, Mina? Are you a pass, play?
I'm a play on this one for sure.
Cool.
I liked it.
Linda?
I am probably not going to watch another episode, but so I'm a pass play though. I think that it's a good show. I just don't have time to add it to the repertoire, but maybe I'll reach out to it at some point.
Cool. Well, we'll keep you posted on what we think of the show and let you know if it's a definite play or not. All right, we're going to talk about the cast real quick. I'm going to let Linda take the driver's seat here, but...
All right. So we have, first and foremost, Carl Urban. He plays Billy Butcher. You know him from Star Trek and Lord of the Rings. Then we have Jack Quaid. He plays Huey Campbell, and you know him from The Hunger Games and Logan Lucky. Next up, we have Anthony. It's Anthony, right?
I think Anthony, like Queer Eye. He's our reference now, right?
Anthony Starr, and he plays Homelander, and you know him from Wish You Were Here, Outrageous Fortune. Next up, we have Erin Morty. She plays Starlight / Annie January, and you know her from Captain Fantastic and Blood Brothers. Next up, we have Dominique McElliott. She plays Queen Maeve, and you know her from House of Cards and The Guard. And then I left out, but I added it at the very last minute, Chase Crawford, because he plays the Deep, and he's a main character as well.
Great, yeah. It's definitely a star-studded cast, and I do have to applaud this pilot. I feel like they balanced this ensemble of characters pretty well. I left the pilot feeling like I at least had an idea of who all these people were.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like they were like power hitters too. There he is. All have like a long, big resume. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like big movies that they've been in. And what I didn't know going into the pilot was that this is based off of a comic. So I pulled up the comic.
Cool.
And I feel like I saw this scene.
Yeah, is that Starlight or...
Yeah.
Or Starlight.
Starlight.
Yeah, it's definitely graphic, and it's interesting to see a superhero show approaching those types of themes because a lot of what we see is so sanitized.
Yeah, and so... I read an article about this specific scene and how the creator of the show had to really grapple with it. He wanted to take it out completely, but the female writers were like, no, this needs to be a part of it.
Great.
Especially because of the Me Too movement and all of this. But, you know, we're going to just not downplay it, but we're going to make it for TV.
Yeah, we're going to talk more specifically about that scene when we get to our spoiler section, but that's interesting to hear, and I'll want to dive into that a little more once we get to that part of the show. But yeah, solid performances. I will say it's fun to see Jack Quaid. If you guys don't know, he's actually the son of Meg Ryan and Dennis Quaid. So to see him, you know, carrying a show on his own and performing, I think it's a great performance he's turning in. He was in a show called Vinyl that could have been better, but he was great in that show, so it's fun to see.
I liked Vinyl.
Yeah, I think that had so many expectations around it that it was just hard. HBO couldn't greenlight that second season, but I thought it was fine.
I liked it. I was so sad to see it go.
Well, let us know if you guys watch Vinyl. Let us know what you think in the comments. That's a show we did cover it here at AfterBuzz, so you can definitely check out our coverage for that. I'm glad you brought up the comic. We'll talk a bit about development quickly, guys. This is, in fact, based on a graphic novel content. Sorry, that's right, a graphic novel, which is also graphic. When I said graphic novel, I meant both a graphic novel and it's specifically graphic. That's sort of what it was trying to do to distinguish itself amongst other competitive superhero content. And that series was written by Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson, who you also might know for Preacher, which has been adapted from AMC. Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, who co-created Preacher, also had a major hand in development of this show.
Right.
Their production company, Point Grey, helped get it off the ground. But the main sort of creative engine behind the show is Eric Kripke, who created, among other shows, Supernatural, which is now the longest-running live-action scripted primetime series on TV. So, a lot of power hitters in this creative team. I think it's come together pretty well. Okay. Before we get into spoilers, the last section we do is sort of if you like this show, other shows you might like. So, any other suggestions for similar content that might lead to someone being interested in this kind of show? I would say Preacher for sure if you're watching that on AMC.
Okay.
Also Watchmen, that movie that came out, that's also based on a graphic novel that Time has rated as one of the best of the last 100 years. Interestingly, HBO is also developing a Watchmen miniseries. So it's interesting that these two are emerging at the same time that they are, because I do feel like there are pretty intense thematic similarities between the two. But I'd say those two recommendations are what I would offer.
Isn't there like a show on Netflix called Seven, or there's like a superhero show on Netflix that was it was either Netflix or
Oh,
Hulu
you're
that's
thinking of Sense8.
Yes.
I could see that ensemble superhero.
Yeah.
Sense8's a little more earnest, I think, but similar kind of high budget, everyday superhero antics.
And then what's the show on? I know which one you're talking about too. On Hulu, where it was a Brit show, and they had special powers, but it was like super nitty gritty. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know if I've seen that
Also,
show.
I think if you watch Marvel's Runaways, is that what you're talking about?
No.
Marvel's Runaways on
I could see
Hulu?
Runaways. I don't know what show you're talking about, but it sounds great.
It's really good.
We'll make sure we have that.
I'll put it up in the comments once I figure out what it's
Also,
called.
a movie with Elle Fanning. I can't remember, but it had a similar vibe to this movie. It was a superhero movie. I cannot remember the name of it, but it was like from a few years ago.
Well, Mina will also put that in the comments, and we'll make sure we let you guys know.
A lot. There's
Yes.
like a lot. I feel like even if you're a fan of like Marvel Universe, DC Universe, you'll still enjoy this because it's a superhero genre.
Definitely, and it's pushing back against, I think, what we've come to expect for superhero shows. So,
Yeah.
any last thoughts on The Boys before we move on to our spoiler section?
Nope.
Let's do it. Drop that spoiler.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Okay.
Spoiler alert!
So,
Spoiler alert!
all right. So, in terms of spoilers, let's start by talking. I actually want to talk about that scene you brought up, Linda, because I
Okay.
feel like we teased it. Those of you guys who have seen the pilot know that one of our protagonists, because it is an ensemble show, the new to the team, sort of doe-eyed young female Annie January / Starlight, played by Erin Moriarty, finds out pretty quickly that this hero who she had held on such a high pedestal is actually a super creep. She basically coerces him into sexual deviance. Well, I'm not going to say sexual deviancy, but into a sexual act for her to maintain her position on the team. Very immediately reminiscent of Me Too.
Yep.
I thought, and I do think it was handled tactfully. It's specifically as the female perspective on our panel. How do you guys feel like that whole scene and storyline was handled?
I was shocked. Like the first time, like the second it happened, I kind of looked away because I was taking notes about something, and I was like, "Wait, what happened?" I rewinded it briefly, and I was like, "Whoa, they chose to put this in here." I was like really surprised by that decision, and then I was like, "It's good that they put that in there because I feel like it's talked about in the news." And some people brush it off. Other people are like, no, this is a serious thing that happens. And I think it's important to have that in the media to see that this actually happens, just to like see it with a character that you can empathize with versus just hearing a story in the news where someone's just a number. Here, you can really like understand what this character is going through. And I think it was like a really intense scene, in my opinion. It was just like, oh wow, this person who not only she looked up to, but who's incredibly good looking. Like, usually when we think of like someone who's a perpetrator of sexual assault, they're usually like portrayed in the media as like, oh, they're just like fat, bald, and like kind of like creepy looking. But here you have like a really incredibly good looking, whatever his name is, Chase
Crawford.
Crawford character. And someone who's like the victim of his sexual assault. So it was just, I really liked what they did with it there. I think it was a really potent scene.
I mean, agreed. I think that it's important to talk about topics that happen to women all the time in the workplace. And I think that they approached it in a way where that happens, where you're straight out of college, or you're you've got the job of your dreams all of a sudden, whatever it is, and you're, doughy-eyed and excited, and then whoever you looked up to or whatever the case may be, they let you down and they do something like that. It happens all the time. So I thought that they handled it quite well.
Yeah, I was restrained. I mean, I feel like there are versions of this scene, specifically if you want to talk about like the way Game of Thrones would have handled this, where the actual act would have been really thrown in our face in a way that feels exploitive. But I think the show effectively communicated the situation that happened without having to, for lack of a better word, shove it down our throats. I probably could have picked better wording there, but it was, I think, sensitively handled. It's interesting. There's a TV critic I really like named Emily Nussbaum. She's a Pulitzer Prize-winning writer for The New Yorker, and she was just interviewed by Terry Gross on Fresh Air, talking about the fact that we can't say that all scenes of female sexual assault are the same. There are some that are obviously very exploitive, but there are some that are very sensitively handled. And, there's been an argument that the pendulum for portraying female sexual assault has swung too far and that it's used too commonly as a plot device and overused. But at the same time, she makes the point that unfortunately, it's such an integral part of the female experience still. I mean, that's what we've seen. So to not include that in the storytelling about so prominently featured females would kind of be dishonest, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was well handled.
And I think one of the best things about the scene when you look at it is you say to yourself, oh, but this character, Starlight, is a superhero. She has super strength. You see her rage and you see how the TV screens crack. And despite all of her physical strength and her power to fight back, she still is at the mercy of this man who is utilizing his power and his position to put her in this place where he's like, I can say you attacked me. I can leverage this because of my social status and my position in the public eye. I can do this. So it was really nice to see someone who was a female who was physically strong still feel like, oh, I can't fight back, because it portrayed the experience. It made that experience even more real and relatable. That even if you have the capacity to fight back, when there is a power imbalance
and a privilege imbalance,
when there's a power imbalance, how can you, if everyone is going to be on this person's team automatically? It's going to be really hard. And you see her go through the struggle of, should I speak up? Should I say something? You know what? Let me at least tell my mom. And then just that fear of disappointing someone, or the fear that someone can't be able to handle what you went through, so you don't want to talk about it. I just really felt for her in that moment, and I think they did a really good job with that scene.
I'm glad you brought up sort of like the privilege dynamics, because I think that's something the show is really interested in. What happens when society and corporations bestow heroism on heroes? Eventually, it will corrupt them, right? It's not so much their powers that have corrupted them, it's their privilege and their upper class status that have corrupted them, which I think is a really interesting theme to explore. I want to talk, Mina, you mentioned the scene, which is, of course, the catalyst for this entire plot, which is Jack Quaid's character losing his girlfriend. That was very interesting to me. How did you guys react to both the situation and how it was shot?
It was weird. I had like this weird disconnect where I was like, oh my god, no, I was just starting to really love this character, even though she was on air for 5 minutes, and I would from the very beginning I was like, oh, I like this character, she seems really cool. From the beginning I was like, I'm so glad they have this girl playing this character, and then literally she just wiped off the face of the planet, and for a second I was like, wait, what's happening here? Did she get hit by a car? I couldn't figure out what was happening. And then when he's just holding on to her arms and he's traumatized, I'm like, this is very Quentin Tarantino-esque, but at the same time really, really sad. You're not you're just whoa, but you still kind of feel the emotions of the loss.
It was shocking. I was shocked. It took me out of, I won't say I was in a tranquil space, but the story was moving along without shock up until that point. And so I was kind of happy-go-lucky. Oh, this is okay, cute. And then I was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Sucked me all the way in. And then, you, I was like, oh, is that blood on his face? Because I'm a little bit of a germaphobe, so I was like, oh, that's so gross. And then when they showed the hands, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah, it was
intense.
The hands look so fake, though. That's the part where I was like, this is so bizarre right now. I was kind of laughing, but I was still, the emotions felt so real. Oh.
Well, I like that the show, it's like an interesting question to ask is like, what is the civilian liability of heroes? That's a question that I think The Incredibles, the first Pixar Incredibles movie, explored really sharply. But I think this is something that could happen, right? Where like if you have someone with super speed who accidentally hits a pedestrian, maybe she was in the street. I mean, obviously the way it was handled and the PR around it is what's supposed to be criticized, but this show isn't afraid to ask those kind of morally complicated questions that a lot of superhero shows just kind of shy away from.
I think the reason we automatically were on his side is because we saw that there was a lack of remorse. You know, the superheroes are like, oh, well, I was just trying to save someone. Oh, well, it's just something that happens.
Yeah.
But then also in that scene, too, you started to realize that, oh, you're kind of a goof as well. Like, you're a superhero, but you're not a nice person, which is, again, what they're going to be exploring more of, right? These corrupted superheroes.
These assholes, right?
Yeah,
like, let's
that's
say
what I
it.
wanna say.
Yeah, I should probably have said that on air, but it seems like the only word that like totally perfectly describes who they are.
Because that's what they are.
Yeah.
But they also seem to be following orders as well. So I feel like eventually the series is going to explore that. Like, what happens if you have great power, but, you know, you're just following orders like everyone else, like of a corrupt system.
Well, that's why I think like the Me Too themes were especially like prescient in this is because this team is backed by a corporation that's pushing them on a commercial level as well. So where we see in Times Square all the promotion, first of all, that had to be a bit of a middle finger to Marvel, you know, where it just feels like we're inundated with it's almost propaganda.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see what if in real life we still turned these people into almost fan-fictionalized superheroes. That was really interesting.
Yeah, I think that scene with the kids and Captain, what was his name?
The Superman Homelander, right?
Homelander.
Yes.
When they were doing the selfie, I was like, see, that encompasses everything. Like, we're making them the superhero. Do you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh,
it kind of feels like what we do with the presidential election too, where we're like, this one person is going to change everything, and we don't look at all the other players involved. We just look to the president. It's like we forget about the congresswomen and men and like the senators, and we're like, no, this one person. Like, forget about midterms, forget about everything else that's super important. This one person is going to save us all, and I feel like that's kind of like the superhero complex.
Yeah, and I think it's the whole idol complex too. Like, we're in a tough industry because we're in entertainment, and we talk about entertainment, but then in our society we idolize entertainers, right? So there's that play on that as well.
Yeah, very interesting. The last scene I want to talk about is the way they handled that final fight scene with Translucent.
I loved it.
That was really, really cool, I thought. So Linda, you were a big fan.
I was a big fan. So first of all, sometimes I'm like not into fight scenes, but this was done so like nitty gritty and different. And when, you know, he got injured and he like spit his blood, and then I was like, that is a genius idea.
Yeah.
I would have thought of that. No, I wouldn't have.
I think you would have.
But I thought that was great, and I liked the fact that what's the other character's name? The boy?
Huey.
Huey.
Yeah.
I liked that Huey kind of grew some balls in the end.
Yeah. It was a cool moment. Good acting from Jack Quaid.
Yeah.
Why does blood show up but dirt doesn't when he's invisible? Like, why? Like, how would they know that blood would show up? I just felt like that was really random. Because if you're invisible, you're invisible. Why would anything show up? I guess it's because they were saying that he's semi-transparent, not invisible.
Well, and he also said that, what did Huey's character say at the end where he knew because skin is something that it would stick?
Oh, porous?
It would conduct electricity because he's made of carbon, so
so
he
maybe
could like shock him. I don't know.
It was cool. That's a good point you bring up, but I think whenever you dissect a superhero anything too much, you just kind of ruin it. That was how I felt with Endgame too. Is I started thinking about it too much, and I was like, I think if I keep thinking about this, I'm going to end up hating this movie.
Too many plot holes.
Yeah, I mean, it's you have to suspend disbelief a little bit, but the thing I appreciated about this was, like you said, Linda, I'm not always a huge fan of fight scenes unless they're really purposeful, and this was so creatively thought. It was very imaginative. I thought there was a lot of imagination that went into staging this fight scene, particularly the shot of the car driving in and slamming into him, and then all those, just very creative.
Yeah, it was good.
And that's the kind of thing that's going to make me tune in to keep watching the show. Any other spoilery moments that you guys want to cover from the pilot before we move on to our last segments?
The plane exploding.
Yeah, that was a heck of an ending.
Yeah, that was... Yeah, I guess we know who was responsible for that now.
You mean in terms of Homelander?
I don't think it was Homelander,
Oh,
though.
the mayor, you mean?
It was, I thought that the lady with the blonde hair gave orders for that. That's what I assumed.
Interesting.
Right?
I couldn't tell if that had been probably orchestrated by her or if the information was relayed and he went rogue.
Yeah.
Was more how I took it. But I think we're supposed to view both of them as equally villainous. So we'll have to
Right.
see.
I love how he makes eye contact with the child, and you're like, oh, what's going to happen? And then he's like, boom.
Yeah.
Like, no mercy.
Yeah,
I was like, what
the-
the hell? What's happening?
The word that Jeff used earlier, that's how I felt about all of them. I was
Yes.
like, oh, all 7 are going to be like this? Great.
But there were 2 women out of the mix of the boys
Uh-huh.
on the name of the show.
That's some commentary there, maybe.
Yeah, so I wonder if those like 2 women are gonna. I wonder if the tables are gonna turn at some point where the women become the more forceful.
I think what
I
would
don't
be...
think so, because I think they're following the actual comic. And from what I
okay.
read with the comic, they just introduced the women in the 3rd, I think it was. But I don't think that they push back and make a big hoorah.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. They could.
They might adapt to the times though now.
Maybe.
Who knows?
What do you
Well,
think, Jeff?
I think I think it would be most interesting if it seems to me like Starlight is going to be hopefully our surrogate into this group, like hopefully morally grounded, the one to hold these guys accountable, guys and girls accountable, or sort of be our maybe the insider sleeper cell who's going to try to bring them down. And I would be most interested if Queen Maeve if she wasn't necessarily just a perfect female character.
Yeah.
I think in older television, if they were trying to promote feminist themes, every female had to be perfect. But we're at a point where we can have messy female characters. So I'd be more interested if Starlight was sort of the hero of this group and we still sort of had a-hole behavior from Queen Maeve. I don't want to just see her be one-dimensionally perfect just because she's the other female character. So we'll
Yeah.
see. I don't know. But I would love to hear what you guys think in the
Yes.
comments below. A lot of people are watching this show, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. Last thing we're going to do is rate the pilot. That's our final segment of the show, and then we have a couple things as we go out. But personally, this was a really well-made pilot. I think it could have been a little maybe deeper in what it was trying to say, but it was beautifully shot and well-acted, so I'm giving it a 3.9
Nice.
This is out of 5, correct?
out of 5.
Yeah, I would give it a solid 4. I really liked it overall. I think the acting was good. I liked how they portrayed the superhero genre and how I felt like it was a callback to the old good old Spider-Man days when it was Tobey Maguire, and it felt like more about story, less about action. And I do like the sketchy FBI guy where it's clear that he's not in the FBI from the beginning, but believe him anyway with the fake plastic badge he has. I liked all those touches. I thought that was fun. I really liked the character Robin, who got killed off in the first 5 minutes. I wish we could see more of her. I thought she was fun. She added some levity to it. And I like how he's working at not a Blockbuster, but it kind of reminded me of Captain Marvel a little bit, where he's working in that electronics store, and there was so much Sony product placement. Oh my god, so much Sony.
I heard if you click on it, you buy an Amazon order right away.
That would be really smart.
I think it's probably coming the next couple of years. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
that's super smart.
I am going to give it a 3.5. I think it was solid. It was well written, well acted. They have some heavy hitters in front of the camera and behind the camera. So I'll be interested to see where they take it. Is it going to be vigilantes versus superheroes? Where are they going with it? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I plan on watching it, so I will let you know. And as I mentioned, I know a lot of you guys have seen only the pilot or more than the pilot or nothing. But if you're someone who's already obsessed with this show, we've got you covered here at AfterBuzz TV. We do have an after show for it. If you haven't seen the show, you've heard our take, and we would, I think all of us recommend it if you're into this kind of content. So thanks for tuning in. Today we covered The Boys on Amazon, but we cover a new pilot every week, every Wednesday at 5 p.m. on the AfterBuzz TV Originals channel. So please check that out. In the meantime, guys, my name is Jeff Graham. Thank you so much for tuning in. We just covered the season season finale of The Bachelorette last night. It was a crazy finale. If you didn't get to check, I'm sure Mina saw it, but
This is the one time I didn't watch
Wow,
it because
it
I
is
was watching
wild.
the debates. That's
Good
the
for
only
you.
reason.
she's the reason our society is fine. I'm the reason our society is screwed.
No, I love the Bachelor franchise. It's the first time I choose to watch like actual news
Well,
and like
I'm
CNN
impressed.
over.
I'm not that good at my civic duty. But I covered that last night, so you can check that out on the reality channel. Mina?
I'm Mina. You can find me on Instagram at Mina Makes Magic.
And I am Linda. Linda's the girly all across social media. Stick around today. I have a bunch of 90-day fiance shows and news.
And Harlots, which
And Harlots is my favorite too.
I want to plug that just because I know a lot of people love sort of underrepresented prestige TV, and you say Harlots is an amazing show. So
Harlots is an amazing show.
cool.
If you're not watching it, you're going to regret it.
So check that out. I love shouting out some of the underdogs on TV. So, all right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. here for TV Pilot Reviews.
Bye, guys.
Our